Hello, and welcome to ALN Thursday at 4. It is Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard, and it is October 1st, 2020. Thank you all for being here. I'm Nick Kanoki, the producer of ALN Thursday at 4, and I'm calling in from my home in Lander, Wyoming. One note before we begin, if you guys have any questions out there, please put them in the chat. We'd love to answer them, but we'll get to them in the last 5 minutes.
Are you excited about the upcoming 2020 Asset Leadership Forum, Restructuring America?
Every year it's an amazing ride. We've pivoted quickly from having an in-person event to having a virtual event. One of the features of the ALN is we are very flexible, and that's worked well for us, and particularly in this case. And Mike and I are particularly glad that we won't be spending one day over the weekend getting ready, printing name tags.
Oh, that's
If you've never printed name tags, you have no idea what a joy that is to do.
Yeah, but something you've said earlier this week is each year we keep building the momentum. And I got to tell you, I've thought that was kind of like, a good platitude, but this year is incredible what we have. We've got the CEO of the first U.S. airport to be ISO 55000 certified, talking about what the benefits are and why he's expanding the certification. This is a CEO who knows ISO 55000 on a chapter verse level. That's going to be a good testimony. We've got the administrator of the first hospital in the world to be ISO 55000 certified. And again, they're expanding it. And thank you, Jim, for getting me involved in this, because it's so neat to be able to understand the background of this. So Art Kurland, our senior fellow, said that even though their certification for ISO 55001 is for personal property, his assistant director is spending 80% of his time teaching the real property asset managers how to start using and incorporating ISO 55000. So it's expanding inside the hospital, it's expanding inside the personal property. Then we've got the executive director of assets for the Department of Homeland Security talking about how they're using a collaborative approach to break down silos between ISO asset categories. It's exactly what we've been talking about, and now we've got top level people coming in and saying this.
Okay, Mike, so take a minute. You talked about getting involved in the ALN. Share a brief version of your first experience with the ALN, because I remember it very well.
I do too. So I had been working with Jack Dempsey for 5 or 6 years, promoting what he was doing in the Coast Guard. And when he went into private industry, he found out about the Asset Leadership Network. And 2 weeks before the first event in Washington, D.C., he gave me a call, explained to me what ISO 55000 was and what this new group Asset Leadership Network is doing. And I hung up from Jack and I booked a ticket to Washington to make sure I attended that. The ALN pre-meeting was at Jacob's office where Jack was working at that time. So I, without even being invited, I just went to that meeting and started taking notes and making comments. And 20 minutes into the meeting, Jim looked at me and goes, "This guy's a keeper." Highest compliment I've been given, and I am very glad to prove you right.
My lasting image is in the sessions when they get to question time, Mike could be, "I got a question, I got a question." And sometimes it was a question and sometimes it wasn't. But it was
a statement, yes. But getting back to the focus on everything that's happening, the other thing I'm excited about for this event is your keynote on the definition of asset leadership. You want to give the attendees a little bit of a snippet of what you're going to be saying there?
Yeah, it's good. You know, we picked the name Asset Leadership Network after a lot of thought. You know, was it going to be, we thought about calling it asset management, and we thought about calling it an institute. But there was already a lot of things named asset management, whatever. So we thought, oh, asset leadership. Well, Google that, and it's like, nobody's using that, and that sounds like what we want to do and what we want to be about. And then we thought, Asset Leadership Institute sounds kind of stodgy for us. We are much more about networking and connections in a variety of ways. So it became the Asset Leadership Network. And that has served us very well. And we never got around to defining what asset leadership was explicitly until this year. And we hit on an easy, simple definition of asset leadership that really fills a hole, because in the development of ISO 55000, it explicitly doesn't address in the documents who's doing it and who's leading it. There's no section about you should have an asset manager, you should have 10 asset managers, you know, where that person should be in the organization, etc. It's just not there. It's about an asset management system, or a management system for asset management. That'll be part of my presentation as well. But the definition we simply came up with is based on the definition of asset management from ISO 55000, which is the coordinated activities my dog just came in the room, so I'm sorry. The coordinated activities of an organization to realize value from assets. So leadership is, well, who's coordinating those activities? Well, that's where the leadership comes in. You know, its leaders are directing and managing and coordinating the activities of organizations to realize value from assets. So it puts the focus on the person responsible for asset management, and within that, the asset management system.
It's a simple grammatic execution. Yeah. And when I explained it to my father, he goes, well, it's about time. That's what you've been named for all these years. Yeah. So that's going to be a good start, is really putting a flag in the ground, differentiating asset leadership from asset management. One of the things that you've said that I've always appreciated and have repeated frequently is that our bridges are not falling down because we don't know how to repair our bridges. Our bridges are falling down because leadership does not know how to gather the resources so that the people who maintain bridges can maintain bridges. So I've always seen this as something that you've got to get to the C-suite or executive directors, however you want to say it. That's why I'm so excited that we have those people speaking and saying what their benefits are. So are there any events that you're looking forward to, or that you think highlights?
Oh, you know, when planning how many, 14 different events or something?
15.
15 now. So we started with 9, and we thought, well, that could be too many. I said, but we'll see how many of these really come together, because we had different groups of people working on them on different topics coming from a couple different angles. You know, there's general interest topics, but there's also sector topics. And we just assumed that 1 or 2 of these would come together, and we would just have a backup to plug in or whatever. And instead of that happening, things have multiplied like bunnies. And so now we have 15 events. And, with great speakers and interesting material in all of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't say one of your babies is prettier than the others. So let's talk about the format. Jenny Zach, our ALN board member, came up with a real good approach for the 90-minute format. So we got 12 90-minute format presentations, and they typically, not all of them, have a 30-minute keynote, a special presentation, and then a panel discussion on the topic. I think that's a great format. People who can only join for part will be able to get substantive information. Those are great. Then we've got 3 1-hour Thursday at 4 special presentations where we'll have U.S. federal asset managers speaking on a panel for the 4th time. Bob Leach is leading that panel. Bob Leach has been presenting on the Army Corps of Engineer asset management work since our 2nd event. So there's a continuity there. We have our first all Spanish presentation, which will be the 2nd ALN Thursday at 4. And that's going to be really exciting. Even though I don't speak Spanish, I'm looking forward to that one. Our final Thursday at 4 will be senior fellows talking about what they thought was important from the series of web events and what they're doing with their plans going forward.
Yeah, next steps. A keynote or a hallmark of these events has always been, it's more about who than how many. And this is, we've had some years, or most years, I guess, 25 to 40 federal agencies involved. And we're having impact in those agencies. Some more visibly right away than others. Involvement of the GAO, Keith Cunningham and Amelia Satchoy, over the years. Keith, I think pretty much from the beginning, through his relationship with Jack Dempsey. And it's really, it's certainly a factor in leading to GAO studies about ISO 55000 and its adoption in the government. And now asset management is much more, or is much more a factor in GAO's thinking about good government and how that can be applied across the government, DoD and the civilian agencies.
We have Jack Kelly on the line. He's been instrumental in the planning of this event. Nick, will you make Jack a panelist so he can make some comments?
Absolutely. Jack Kelly is coming in as a panelist. I will make sure that he has everything he needs.
Hi, Jack.
Hey,
Hey, Jack.
enjoyed hearing. I've enjoyed hearing all of your comments, and I think, and I certainly echo the thought that every year we seem to top the previous year, and it's just kind of awesome that we're able to do that, and it's a joy to be part of this enterprise.
I should say that Jack Kelly started off being a senior fellow, an ALN senior fellow, and this year he has accepted a position on the ALN board. So we really appreciate his input. And Jack has a particular penchant for wanting to understand what's going on around the world. Jack, will you comment on our international scope this year?
Well, we've those of you who, or the folks who were at last fall's conference, had an opportunity to hear a presentation that I gave about where in the world is ISO 55000. I became fascinated with that question because when Michael Hardy and I, another ALN senior fellow, were writing a white paper a couple of years ago, we looked into the question of how widely had ISO 55000 been implemented around the world. And the best measure of that is reports of certification. So Jim Dieter was kind enough to tell us about a website that the Technical Committee for Asset Management, TC 251, operates. And on that website, they list organizations that they say are known certified organizations. So we went to that list and realized that there are 4 countries in the world: Japan, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and Australia, that have like 10 times more organizations that are certified than any other countries. It's just the difference between those 4 and everybody else is just quite noticeable. So I became curious as to why that was, and so the search for why that was became the focus of my attention to put that presentation together. And in the process of doing that, I got to meet some pretty cool people from around the world. And we've got 2 of them that are going to be speaking at our conference this year. One is Peter Kohler from Australia, who helped create the Asset Management Council and was one of the founding people in the Asset Management College. And then also
Hi, Peter. Peter's joining us again today. So thank you, Peter, for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Peter. We need to talk still. In addition, Boudewijn Nijens, who's from the Netherlands originally, but currently lives in Canada, he's the convener for Working Group 3 within TC 251, and that's the communications working group, and they operate that TC 251 website. So these are 2 folks with really amazing perspectives on asset management going back a long, long way. And I think they're going to add a whole lot to our conference, and we're excited to have them.
We also have Rhys Davies speaking, right, and Ark Wingrove, and Daniel Ortiz from Bogota. And so we really are expanding our scope. The coronavirus forced us to make lemonade out of lemons, and I think this is some pretty good lemonade that we're having.
Sure is.
So should I share my screen so that we can kind of scroll through and show everybody what's coming up, and people can comment as
Sure.
as we go through? And there we go. Okay, so the first day, Jim is going to start off with the definition of asset leadership. Jenny Zach is going to provide an overview. There's going to be, Jack and Jim, why don't you talk about the NALS presentation that will be occurring on the first day?
Jack, go ahead.
Okay, so, last year we presented the foundational elements of what we're calling the NALS, the National Asset Leadership Strategy. And we had done some thinking about implementation, but it wasn't well enough evolved for us to include that in the presentation. So part 1 of the NALS document was just the foundational elements. So earlier this year, we started having discussions on what next. And so we developed this National Asset Leadership Success Strategy. Success in that the whole purpose of ISO 55000 is to help organizations succeed in managing their assets to achieve objectives. So that's kind of the framework that we set out for ourselves. The other thing we decided was it probably makes, given the way the United States is organized to address laws and sectors of the economy, that a sector-based approach would be the most promising approach, because there are very unique aspects to different sectors like energy, transportation, subsets of sectors like within energy, you've got generation and distribution, all that kind of stuff. So we developed a document that lays out ways that teams of people who are focusing on different sectors can approach that work. And so we'll talk somewhat about that at the kickoff. And then some of the topics that we're discussing during during the course of the program, and you'll cover them later, are sector focused as well. So we're trying to build a sector focus in the way we implement asset management in this country.
And I got to jump in to say the other panel on the first day is going to be Jack, along with Tony McGrail and Tom Smith. So three of my favorite people in asset management, and three amazing, intelligent, remarkable people. And we gave them a blank check as to what to talk about under the topic of future of assets. A
blank
we'll
check
where
and
that
open microphone, danger.
I have to say Tony McGrail was involved at the very beginning of the Asset Leadership Network. In the first presentation, I really was kind of lost. But he came up and said to a group of 120 people, can anybody tell me an asset that is not valuable? Dead silence. And then he goes, okay, so we're talking about everything. And I was like, with my people, this is what I want to be. Okay, we're going to have to go quicker because we've got a lot of events to kind of give a scope to. We kind of talked about this one already. Kofi Smith is from the Atlanta Airlines Terminal Corporation. And then we've got an array of people who will be speaking about infrastructure from a hands-on perspective.
All-star cast.
Yeah. Jim, you want to talk about this one?
Absolutely. I think Amber's with us today and is a frequent participant. We'll have to get her on here we'll definitely have her on here as on a chat all by herself at some point in the near future. But, in this one I have a little different approach in that we have three speakers. Amber from DOD, Doug Getz, who is Mr. NPNA and an educator around asset management and personal property, especially with contractors, and then Bill Garrett from GSA. So really looking forward to that. And then, geez, every time I say his name, I can just really feel it. But a good friend, a big supporter of the ALN, and somebody who's had an impact on everybody he came in touch with in the asset management community in the government. Bob Holcomb has recently passed away. And we're going to spend the last part, and let it go on as long as it goes, to talk about Bob and allow people to say a few words about their appreciation or whatever they like to say about Bob. So
that's why I like this organization, is it's personal. It's family. Yeah. Here's another all-star cast, demystifying standards and certification, and our own Nick Kanoki is going to be part of that because he is the backbone of our technology involvement. Nick, you want to talk a little bit about what you do?
Oh, I help things run. Jack and Jim and Mike give me all kinds of database ideas, ways to leverage our network, in pursuit of this noble goal of kind of improving asset management and leadership in the country and the world. So yeah, I assist, and I have been taking a more active role in, in meeting people in the organization, really getting to work with more people than, Mike, you're great, and Jim, you're great, but it's been nice working with other people that, are involved in the Asset Leadership Network as well.
Yeah.
And it's ever evolving, especially with this digital event.
Our exam is now online exam, and we wouldn't have been able to do it if Nick didn't interface with the Proctorio technology that lets people log in, take the tests remotely, and then proceed. Okay, we got to really rip through things here.
We can't go on without mentioning Dominic Townsend. He's an ALN board member and is a big part of this presentation. And it's really an opportunity to talk to somebody that's the global practice lead for the only organization that's accredited to certify organizations to ISO 55000 in the United States. So that's quite an opportunity.
And Rich Culberson has been so instrumental in taking things to a higher level and making connections between standards bodies. And I've already mentioned Bob Leach and his manager, so we'll be able to pass through that. This one I'm so very excited about. Jennifer, Zach, and I talked with Hugh Sinclair yesterday, and the first thing he said is, "Thank you for inviting me to speak. I've been wanting to talk about addressing inequity through asset leadership for a long time." And then he went on a 5-minute hacked monologue that described everything we want this panel to be. So I'm sure this is going to be great. We've got Mark Moriel, president of National Urban League, starting it off, and then Hugh is going to help us. Eric is a new senior fellow. Daniel is a senior fellow, and Cecilia Mowat, it went up to the top. Cecilia Mowat is a lawyer with international real estate experience. Pharmaceutical asset management is very interesting. Bob Smith is a senior fellow and a board member, and he is going to be explaining the Pharma 4.0, which is an initiative to improve pharmaceutical manufacturing and how that aligns with ISO 55000. Mark Giuliani is going to make a model of a pharmaceutical facility and pass the information on to Nick Kissel and show how it actually works. This is going to be really interesting and exciting. Federal facility management, Ken Burgess, I've mentioned from the Department of Homeland Security. He's actually doing a keynote panel. He is one of those leaders who recognizes that he doesn't know everything, and he's going to have Eric Brown and other people from the Department of Homeland Security on there. And when he's done with his part, we'll hand it off to them. Really interested in that.
Got to at least mention that every year we've had part of our event, at least, has been at the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. And it's, this connection continues, but we aren't able to use the facility this year. But hopefully we'll again next year.
And that's why Cameron Oskvig will be speaking, and Jack and Mike Imony will be talking about the way that the National Academies is going to be publishing a paper that really emphasizes ISO 55000. And then Bill Broad is talking about how ISO 55000 is being used at NASA. They're starting to use ISO 55000 at NASA. So that'll be really
2-minute
great
warning.
too. Yes, healthcare. Art Kurlan, I talked about the university health system. Tia Margos, who is with the Andrew James Advisory Group. And then Ed Safdie, sorry, my fingers keep going. Ed Safdie used to be the head of the chief engineer for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. So he asked his buddy, who's the current chief engineer, to be speaking. And if this only serves to connect the VA to ISO 55000, this whole event will be worthwhile. I talked about ALN Espanol. We've got the Federal Law Enforcement Asset Leadership panel that Moshe Nelson is leading, and Karen Lopez, Chief Asset Management for Federal Bureau of Investigations. How cool is that?
Grant Thornton started that initiative last year. Yep.
Yes. Water and wastewater. We've got Uberlytics coordinating the presentation by David Collinsworth, the CEO of a significant Texas water authority. They're afraid they need more than 90 minutes. They've got so many good things to talk about. And then finally, not finally, but almost final, is a presentation by Peter Kohler that Jack Kelly was just so insistent Peter have time. Hi, Peter. Jack is really your advocate, and we look forward to your presentation. And then there will be a chance for people to talk about the event and what was significance. And then the final event is the Senior Fellow Forum.
Wowza, Mike. That was a way to get through weeks of events and work and really important people in minutes. Amazing. Thank you for doing that short synopsis. Again, we are really trying to respect everyone's time that was here today, so we had to move through that quickly. But of course, you can see all this information on our website, and we'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to reach out to us personally for more information. Do you guys want to say some closing, and then I'll play the end slides?
Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Yep. Looking forward to next week and the following. Thanks, Nick.
Okay, and as always, thank you so much, Jim Dieter, CEO, ALN. Would not be possible without you, and Mike Bordenaro, Director of Communications. And of course, our organizational members. Again, without them, none of this would be possible. There's our notes about the production team. And again, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us personally or email webinar@assetleadership.net. See you all next week, and for the big event.
Sign up and send it to other people.